What's up YouTube, my name is Gio, and if you've been following my channel for a while, it should come as no shock to you that my expectations for the Snyder Cut could best be described as cautiously optimistic. I haven't exactly kept it a secret that I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder's interpretations of DC's cast of characters. And while I never judged something before watching it, I've been burned by Zack Snyder's DC movies enough to go into it with an open mind, but not expecting something on the level of Infinity War. Or Iron Man 2. But to my surprise, I actually found myself enjoying the movie a lot more than I anticipated, and definitely prefer it over the theatrical cut. However, while the question, do I like the Snyder Cut, has an easy answer, I found myself constantly going back to something more important. Is the Snyder Cut actually good?
Be very careful with the next thing you say.
Before I go ahead and point out the obvious flaws with this movie, I think I should first talk about what I liked about the Snyder Cut, because yes, there are things I enjoyed in this movie, and it's also a good way to ease you all into the ass slapping I'm going to give this film towards the end. But enough of that, let's look at the positives. For one, I like that we had more time to spend with the individual members that will form the Justice League. I always found it weird that in the theatrical cut, we are at the start introduced to 3 new characters, and by the end, still know barely anything about them. Because why the hell will we need to know anything deep about individual members of our team-up movie? The Snyder Cut fixes this by including many scenes that help to flesh out these characters, and is best seen within the newcomers of Aquaman, The Flash, and Cyborg. Each of these guys get more time and story dedicated to them, and results vary from good to world-breakingly bad. But for now, let's look at Aquaman, who while doesn't get a lot of new scenes, manages to work great with what he got. In the theatrical cut, the character is very one-note as a cool buff surfer guy, with the only deviation of that being played up for laughs. In the Snyder Cut, the extra dialogue sets up Arthur's relationship with Atlantis, a bit of his backstory, and this scene in particular with Barry really helps in characterizing Arthur as not just someone who looks out for himself.
We're asking a kid who just lost his father to go up against the most powerful machines in the universe. It's not fair.
I thought you didn't care.
I never said that.
These are examples of good additions to the film, because it fleshes out Aquaman's character without breaking the world building. Don't worry, we'll get to you later. As for my thoughts on the other characters, The Flash and Cyborg are definitely the standouts, as they get a shit ton of more screen time than in the theatrical cut. And for the most part, I liked many of the additions. Barry especially was a lot less annoying than what he was. Here he's still comic relief, just not as in your tits about it. Except for this. This is weird. Other than whatever that was, the Snyder Cut did a better job at showing why the Flash belongs on the team. He's exceptionally faster in this version and plays many key roles in the story, whereas in the theatrical version, he barely contributed to the team and just seemed to be there for a quick injection of Marvel humor when the writers felt like your levels were low. As for Cyborg, I think for once I'd have to agree with Zack Snyder when he said that he was the heart of the film. Victor is definitely the most complex character out of the bunch, and it was nice to see him develop from a boy so blind with anger that he took his second chance of life for granted, to a man with the ability to move past that anger and make the most out of his reroll of life. And while I do think the character does have a few consistency issues, Ray Fisher's performance and overall narrative of his arc often would make me forget about them. It's obvious that Fisher has a deep-seated love for this character, and was able to cover the writer's mistakes with heart and charisma. As for our DC Trinity, they're fine. Batman and Superman are finally given moments to be more heroic, and after being pegged by the edginess of the past DCEU movies, it is a nice change of pace to not have Batman try to obliterate random goons. I can't deny that it was nice to see these characters actually saving people and being heroes. Wonder Woman is the member though that kinda got the shaft. I mean, she's okay, but her main focus is purely to fight shit and give exposition. Doesn't really add or take away from her character, so my feelings towards her are neutral. The last thing I want to address that I liked is the changes to the main villain, Steppenwolf. He got a massive overhaul, not just design, but his entire plan and motivation. Unlike in the theatrical cut, we find out that his motivations for finding these mother boxes is so he can eventually return home after betraying his master Darkseid. And while that doesn't make him an amazing villain by any means, the fact that we can understand his need to want to go home makes him a lot better than the theatrical version. And on a side note, from a character design level, despite the unnecessary amount of spikes, I love Steppenwolf's design. I think the best way to describe what I like about it is by showing this scene. Here we learn that Steppenwolf cannot return home until he takes control of a fuck ton of more planets in the name of Darkseid, and the VFX team chose to have his eyes get bigger when he is reminded that he can't go home. It kind of has strong parallels to a dog's facial reaction, and it's able to make us artificially feel for the character. It's just a nice touch that I wanted to point out. Anyway, back to Steppenwolf's plan. We get information for why he chose where he kept these mother boxes, and that in order to find the location of the second mother box, Steppenwolf had to probe it from the mind of an Atlantean guard. So he was able to boom tube there without making it seem like he can just teleport in front of the box with no prior information. Seriously, Josh Whedon, what the f were you thinking there? Overall, I had a fun time watching the Snyder Cut, and that's mainly because if you have seen any video on my channel, you would know that I put a lot of enjoyment stock into if I like the characters, and Snyder did a decent job at fleshing out a lot of the League and our main villain. Even if there are characters I don't enjoy, I at least have a few in here that I do, which is more than what I can say about the theatrical cut. So yes, I enjoyed the Snyder Cut and will probably watch it again. But if you look at this video's timeline bar, you should know that we ain't done just yet. Now before you all go down to the comments section in a preemptive strike to defend the Snyder Cut, let me make one point very clear. This is not me trying to take the fun out of something you enjoy, and this certainly is not me saying that you are wrong for liking something. However, this is me trying to look at a film from a more critical lens to see if its plots and characters stay consistent within the movie's world. Zack Snyder was given free range to make the film he initially wanted, and he started by taking out everything Joss Whedon reshot. And while a lot of that was for the benefit of the film, I'm looking at you, Vertical Video of Superman, there were some moments that would actually have been nice to stay around. A good example is this exchange between Batman and the Flash.
It's really cool, you guys seem ready to do battle and stuff, but full transparency, I've never done battle. I've just pushed some people and run away.
Save one person.
Which one?
Don't talk, don't fight. Get in, get one out.
And then?
You'll know.
It makes sense that with Barry's low level of experience, he would be initially nervous about the fight, and it's nice to see Bruce fall into that mentor role like he normally does with the Robins. More importantly though, what this does is it reasonably nerfs Barry. You see, the Flash is probably one of the most powerful characters in DC Comics, so his Rogues Gallery is specifically made to have some way to counteract his speed. This can range from tech that can slow him down, like Captain Cold's freeze gun, to pure mental or physical strength to take a beating, like Gorilla Grodd. My point being that the Flash is very powerful, but by showing him as inexperienced, it's a good way to artificially nerf his powers and not just have him as a get-out-of-trouble-free card.
But you were saying that before the Flash was too weak, now he's too powerful?
Yes, I did say that, because a character can be inexperienced and still be powerful. I'm just asking for a proper balance as to not fuck with the film's stakes. Don't worry, Scene, I'll get to you, just wait your turn. While many of Snyder's changes are for the better, like Batman already putting a team together before finding out about Steppenwolf to keep him in line with what he said he would do in Batman vs Superman, and a proper explanation on how the mother boxes work, there are also changes that serve no purpose as a story or actually fucks with the world building so hard you would think you wound up on a very different website. But what I do on my Fridays aside, an example of this broken world building can be seen when we learn about Darkseid's first invasion on Earth. Here he fought the people of Man, Themyscirans, Atlanteans, a Green Lantern, and the fucking gods. Now, in the theatrical version, Steppenwolf was the one to invade Earth, and he only retreated because he was forced to. This actually helps in showing how threatening Steppenwolf is, as after fighting these massive conflicts against literal gods, he retreated against his own wishes. Hell, he probably could have gone a few more rounds. With Darkseid, he's a bitch. Seriously? This is the guy that's supposed to be so threatening and scary? The guy that just got beat by a god who himself ended up dying to Wonder Woman? If we're going off of prison rules right now, Diana is at the top of that metaphorical food chain. The point I'm trying to make is that while Snyder's extra scenes did add more context to many elements of the film, others end up actually creating more problems than what was there for the theatrical version. I feel like Snyder should have actually watched the theatrical cut and asked himself, what was cut, Why, and was the scene that was cut helping or hurting the film's consistency? And while we're on the topic of consistency, the Snyder Cut has a lot of problems when it comes to characters and consistencies. While I understand that this isn't the version of Justice League that I grew up with, a lot of characters are inconsistent with not just the source material, but also within the DCEU. An easy example to point to is the inclusion of Martian Manhunter. This is clearly fan service, as Snyder has stated that at the end of the movie where Bruce meets Martian Manhunter for the first time, that spot was supposed to be taken up by a Green Lantern, but Warner Brothers shut them down. Now, while I do love me some fan service, the character has no purpose in the movie and actually ends up hurting Snyder's other works. To start with the Snyder Cut itself, the inclusion of Martian Manhunter actually takes away from a nice scene between Superman's mom, Martha Kent, and Lois Lane, because as Martha leaves, she's revealed to be the Martian Manhunter in disguise, and this interaction almost ends up getting Batman killed. For those of you who don't know, at the start of the movie, it is established that every morning, Lois visits Superman's memorial, which later is where the League fights a resurrected Superman and Lois comes in to stop him. However, that time was supposed to be her last because she was going to go back to working full-time at the Daily Planet after her talk with the Martian.
I didn't think you were coming.
One last time.
I guess it was really lucky that Martian Manhunter didn't decide to come talk with Lois a few days before, or she wouldn't be at the monument during Superman's return, leaving Batman to be nothing more than a stain on the fucking grass. We also are shown that Martian Manhunter is actually General Swanwick from Man of Steel, and seeing him as this character who is often portrayed on the same level as Superman kinda makes him an asshole. I mean, you're telling me that the world almost ended twice, Metropolis as a city has received damages equivalent to 1,000 terrorist attacks, fucking doomsday, and this man didn't think to intervene once? Oh, I'm sorry, he had to make sure that Lois went back to the Daily Planet, because that's the great use of the Martian's valuable time. Speaking of our favorite boy in blue, or black in this movie, Superman kinda sucks. Like, I don't get the obsession people have with making Clark evil, and I'm not just talking about Snyder. It seems to be a trend nowadays to run the Man of Steel's character through the mud. I mean, this scene of him protecting Cyborg is nice and seemingly heroic, until you remember that he just did this, felt no remorse after the fact, and is supposed to lead up to this. I'm sorry, I need to rant for a second. Like I said before, it seems like a trend to make Superman evil, and I'm not saying that it can't work. I mean, look at the video game and comic book run Injustice: Gods Among Us. Superman here has become a tyrannical dictator after Joker tricked him into killing Lois and their unborn child. But you know why that works and not the DCEU version? Because in Injustice, we get to know the true Superman, the hopeful light that is Clark Kent. So when we see this out-of-character Superman, it's a sharp contrast from how he's supposed to be, and it makes us sympathize with what brought the Man of Steel to this point. I honestly feel so bad for Henry Cavill. He seems like a genuinely great guy, and he has never gotten the chance to play a truly hopeful Superman.
I understand what you're saying, but when it comes to fans, it is a fan's right to have whatever opinion they want to have. And people are going to be upset because, especially when you're talking about books or games, because you're never going to be the exact person who they had in their head or who they played on Witcher 3, for example. I don't necessarily consider that toxic. I just consider that passionate.
There are some smaller inconsistency issues, like during Cyborg's first meeting with Diana, he's still talking about his powers in a more negative light, when literally 20 minutes earlier, he was having a grand old time flying around and saving a nice lady and her family from being evicted. How are you still calling your powers a curse when you literally just proved to yourself that it can be used to help people? The Flash gets shot in both of these scenes, but manages to speed heal in only one. And this scene where Diana comes to the conclusion that Arthur is a half-breed Atlantean because he breathes air, when most Atlanteans, including just basic guards, seem to be just fine with sucking up oxygen. Instead of thinking, oh, he could be royalty, or oh, he could be a strong warrior, she just goes, nope, he's a half-breed, that's it, no other needed. Honestly, you would think the one person from Themyscira wouldn't jump the gun like that. And while I am on the topic of Diana, the DCEU has no idea what they want to do with her characterization. Like, does she kill? Does she not? Does she want to save the world with love or decimation? She's probably the most inconsistent character in this universe. And don't get me started on Batman. I don't care that Batman has killed in this universe. I personally don't like it, and think, just like in the case of Superman, that before you deconstruct the character, you need to, I don't know, construct them first. My issue is Zack's view of Batman's combat is very limiting. We see him use his grappling hook, maybe a couple batarangs, and an alien gun. These restrictions lead him to kinda getting sidelined during the climactic fight, and Batman is more than that, especially if he's fighting these world-ending threats. I mean, as stupid as the Batman v Superman fight is, having Bruce invent all these gadgets to use to take down the Man of Steel shows why he can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the Justice League. Not because he's the strongest, but because he's always thinking 5 steps ahead. Imagine Batman holding his own against Steppenwolf because he's using all of his gadgets and tech similar to in BVS. That would be a much more interesting fight and use for Batman during this scene. I know he was supposed to be protecting the Flash during the Steppenwolf fight, but Barry still got shot, so it really makes his job feel kind of irrelevant to the overall plot. Speaking of the Flash and the plot, I think it's about time that we bring up this scene where the planet is about to be destroyed, and to fix it, Barry runs so fast that he is rewinding time. Now at first, I love this scene. I still even get some enjoyment out of it if I just focus on the pure spectacle. However, as an avid watcher of the Flash TV show, something felt off. And then I realized that by trying to fix how useful the Flash is in this movie, Zack Snyder made him extremely overpowered. I say this because when Barry is talking about going this fast, he makes a point to say that he has one rule that he can't break. That being, don't fuck with time. However, Barry proceeds to break this rule not once, but twice in this movie. Now, I'm not against him using his full speed to save the day. However, I do have a problem when you set up rules for a hero's powers and then don't show the consequences of breaking that rule. You can make a character really interesting by giving them limits. For example, Batman's limit is that he is only human, so seeing him go up against these enhanced individuals and aliens is inherently interesting because our hero now needs to be resourceful and think outside of the box. In the Flash show on the CW, back when it was good, Barry was always told that messing with time will have irreversible consequences. And when Barry still breaks this rule, he is punished for it, to show that Barry can't just go and reverse time to get the outcome that he wants. In the Snyder Cut, the Flash breaks his no time travel rule twice and nothing happens, not even acknowledging that this could lead to some consequences in the future. This brings up the obvious follow-up question that if there are no consequences to reversing time, then why the fuck not just abuse the shit out of that power? This takes away the stakes from any scene the Flash is in, because to solve the problem, you can just run super fast. If you roll back time, who cares? There's no consequences. Let's say I tell you to not put your hand on a hot stove. You later end up touching the stove and don't get burned. Hell, I don't even try to punish you for breaking the one rule that I gave you. So if there's no consequences, you're gonna break the rule again. If you're not going to have consequences for breaking a rule, why even have it to begin with? You can actually solve this with one scene. After defeating Steppenwolf, Bruce can notice that Barry is a little on edge. He can then go up to him and ask, what's wrong? And Barry can say something like, I broke my rule. I messed with time. And if I know anything about the timeline, it doesn't like to be messed around with. I feel like this could bite us in the back later. Bruce can then go to comfort Barry and tell him, you did what you had to do. Whatever comes from this, we will face it together. That's it. That's all I want. Something that addresses the fact that there will be consequences because the Flash went back and reversed time. And you know what? I could get past a lot of these problems and inconsistency with the movie. But there is one thing that really fucks with the film. Look, I enjoy the Snyder Cut. I really do. But the plot is so broken and relies on so many contrivances to even happen. One of the biggest problems comes from the backstory of Darkseid's first invasion on Earth. The main one being, how the fuck does Darkseid not know that the anti-life equation is on Earth? For those of you who haven't sat through this movie, the anti-life equation is apparently something that Darkseid has been looking for at minimum hundreds of years. And the film establishes that he found it on Earth, or as Steppenwolf puts it,
He found it, hidden on a primitive planet.
Now, like I said, Darkseid did get fucked up like a bitch during his first attempt to get the equation, and eventually had to retreat. After he is healed up, Darkseid proceeds to never come back for the equation, because he somehow forgot where Earth was. Are you fucking kidding me? You are trying to tell me that this advanced alien civilization, capable of having technology so advanced it can be considered sorcery, doesn't have the coordinates to the one planet that not only stopped Darkseid in his tracks, but also has the one thing this man has been searching for centuries?
He almost died when he returned to Apocalypse. He was in a fight for power, and much time passed before he was in a position of power again, and by then, all who have been with him have been slayed.
Snyder, come the fuck on. You can't be so stupid to think that this solves the problem. Again, technologically advanced civilization doesn't save coordinates to the one planet that beat them. And even if we ignore that, you don't think that as soon as Darkseid wakes up, even if he's struggling for power like Zack says, he would at least go to someone who was there at the conflict before they died and go, hey, where the fuck was that planet that kicked my ass? There is suspending my level of disbelief. And then there is amputating my f***ing brain. This makes no sense whatsoever. In order to believe that Darkseid forgot what planet he found the anti-life equation on and not invaded again with a bigger army, we have to believe that he is incompetent as someone who has destroyed thousands of worlds and forgot the one that beat him. Because yes, that is exactly what we want to see as a character trait of Darkseid, incompetence. And that's not the only problem that fucks around with the plot. Take this scene for example.
Even if Superman could return, who's to say that he could defeat them?
The Mother Box did. Victor's father activated a Mother Box more than a year ago when Superman was still alive. Didn't call out to Steppenwolf. None of the boxes did, not until
Superman died.
They were afraid of him.
So the one Mother Box called out to Steppenwolf because Superman died, and they were, according to Bruce, afraid of him. Okay. If that's the case, I have a couple questions. What about the hundreds of years prior to Superman landing on Earth? That seems like a perfect time to wake up and call out for someone. Or if you want to go with the force of Superman's death scream initially woke up the boxes. So why the fuck did only one call out to Steppenwolf? Wouldn't they all realize, this bitch is dead, let's give our boss a call? No matter how you slice it, the only way to have any of this make sense on why now Steppenwolf came to Earth for the Mother Boxes and not sometime earlier is to take a bunch of leaps of logic. And that's just the big stuff. There are a few smaller plot holes that fucks this movie harder than breakup sex. Like, how does Aquaman know that the team is under Gotham Harbor in order to save them? Hey, it's lucky he guessed correctly, or the entire team would be deader than Superman's secret identity.
Clark. No.
Yeah, brilliant Batman and Lois Lane thinks it's perfectly fine to call Superman Clark in front of the policeman and an army soldier, because that wouldn't spread like fucking wildfire, especially when the movie is done and all of a sudden Clark is back and alive. God, what a coincidence that both Clark Kent and Superman has come back from the dead. I would want to see the Snyderverse return just to see the backflips that they would do for the next movie to have to explain any of this shit. And this is just me scratching the surface. I'm sure there's a ton of more problems, like how the fuck did no one in the Army of Man make any record of this first fight with Darkseid? Nobody thought to write it down or make a note of it or something? You could easily just fix this by having Diana explain that the story turned into legend, kind of like the Greek gods to the people of man, or I don't know, just give me something, anything to work with here. The point is that the Snyder Cut's plot is broken beyond repair. Zack Snyder tried his best to patch up the movie's issues in characters and setup, but the cracks in the story were too deep to fix.
That's not very careful.
The Snyder Cut is a film that is more tolerable than its theatrical brother. It adds a lot of growth that was needed for characters like Cyborg and The Flash, fixed a lot of visual and tonal screw-ups, and admittedly made the Justice League feel more like a team. I mean, we finally got combo attacks. Hallelujah. I genuinely enjoyed watching the Snyder Cut. But that doesn't make it a good movie. It's filled with plot contrivances, inconsistencies, and plot holes that, if given even a little bit of thought, breaks the movie on a fundamental level. And you know what? It is okay to like a bad movie. There is absolutely nothing wrong with getting enjoyment out of something with problems. For example, I like Suicide Squad. Almost nobody thinks Suicide Squad is a good movie, because it's not, but I accept that and still enjoy it. I'm actually really happy that Zack Snyder got to finish his film. He seems like a good guy who just has different ideas for what he wants to do with these characters. And part of me wants to see him get the sequel to this movie like he intended to, so we could get the full scope of his vision. I'm also really happy that the fans finally got the movie they have been wanting to be released for years, and I'm sure they all thought it was great. But to say that the movie is damn near perfect, or has no flaws, or is as good as movies that are way better written, then that only ends up hurting creators who put so much time into making sure that everything in their work makes sense within the universe to the smallest minute detail. We need to hold these superhero movies to as high of a standard as we would any other genre, so creators that really go that extra mile are rewarded. I'd personally give this movie a decent 6 out of 10, mainly because I'm a DC shill, but if I'm being realistic, the film is like a 3, maybe a 4 out of 10 at best. The Snyder Cut is a mess, but it's a mess that I and many others enjoy. You could accept that something has flaws, may even be broken, and still like it. That's why I have no problem saying that the Snyder Cut is not actually good. That was a long one. Anyway, I do hope you guys did enjoy the video. I'm sorry that it took so long for it to come out. I just completely underestimated how long and how much time was needed for this. And also some real life stuff got in the way. And it was a mess, but it's done, it's over, and we can move on. Anyway, my next video will definitely not be as long as this one, but it's going to be on a show that is just the absolute worst. And I'll let you guys speculate on what that is. Besides that, what do you guys think of the Snyder Cut? It's been about a month since the movie's come out, so we've all had time to mull it over. What do you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys are any new to the channel, hit that like and that subscribe button. Also, if you think this channel has potential, hit those same buttons and click on the notification bell. That way you are notified whenever I release new content. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you all later. Peace.